All right, all right. I don't know how to cut that out. I don't know how to save that. Hey, everybody. Uh, Lunas of Luke. Lunas of Luke, we got the text we're looking at is the lectionary text. Here's the for coming Sunday, which is the beginning of the Sermon on the Plain in Luke. So, Luke chapter 6, let me pull that up. All right, here we go. Came down with them and stood in a level place. Um, just so you know, um, Jesus has called the disciples here. So um, you have the selecting of the 12. He's called the disciples beforehand, but he has the selecting on the 12 up in a mountain where they've been praying. So comes down from the mountain where they've been praying. He came down with them and stood on a level place. A great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all in the crowd were trying to touch him, for power came out from him, and he healed all of them. Then he looked at his disciples and said, Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, revile you, and defame you on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy, for surely your reward is great in heaven, for that is what their ancestors did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets. All right. So you'll notice right away that the big distinction in Luke is that you have this set of woes that go along with the beatitudes. So it gets a little bit spicy and confrontational right away in this text. And so again, we're looking at these texts in preparation for some of us preaching them on Sunday. Obviously, we have to think about how this text builds on what we've talked about, what Luke has talked about so far. Because Luke has shown us in Jesus' mission, shown us what Jesus has come to do, what that means. And we know that Jesus has come, and I'll pull up that. Let me pull up that text as well. The text from Luke 4, when we looked at Jesus' mission statement from the other week, we see that this concern for the poor is running all throughout what Jesus is talking about, and Luke in particular will really focus on this idea of this great reversal that will happen this great reversal when the year of the Lord's favor comes, and as it says in the Magnificat, those who are hungry will be filled, and those who are rich will go away empty-handed. Sorry, I'm having some trouble figuring out what happened to my. There we go. There it is. Yeah. Again, let's jump back to. We can get back to. Get back to Jesus in Luke 4 as well. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he's anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to sent me to proclaim a release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. So again, and then we could go all the way back. I won't do that now, but you could go all the way back to the Magnificat of Mary when she talks about this great reversal as well. So this is what we see happening in this text. And again, as I say, it gets spicy right away, especially as we who in North America have to think about how we preach this text, what we say about this text that includes these woes for those who are rich and those who are well fed and those who are have mirth and joy now, and what God's presence will mean for them. So it's kind of it's an interesting text. It's a risky one. I'm trying to see if, for some reason, Mark and them have been booted out somewhere or not able to get in. So I'm going to resend the invite real quick to see if I can get them in. Sorry, everybody. Let me just do that real quick. I heard somebody. All right, there's Leonard. Hey, Leonard.
Yes, I had trouble getting in. It didn't want to, let me in. So I don't know what's going on there.
I know sometimes it gets a little, finicky. I don't know what it is, but yeah. So how you been?
Oh, busy day, doctor's visit. Yesterday, I'm coming back from church and my dashboard starts lighting up on me.
Oh no!
And all the belts are connected, and so none of the belts were working. So I had to get that towed, and
yeah, one of those. Yeah. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Oh, good evening. Good evening.
Excellent. All right. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what the link was acting a little funny, I guess.
No, I had just gotten off work, just hung up my last call. So.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah. So wow.
Good. Yeah. All right. So we have woes to the rich tonight.
The woes.
So
Whoa.
that's always interesting. Always interesting. I had a couple of couple cartoons, or at least one cartoon. I was gonna, you know, um, that's kind of some indication of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would have gone good with my op-ed. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
How much is enough?
Yeah.
You know what? One of my favorite movies is the first Wall Street, because I love the character that Michael Douglas plays as Gordon Gekko, and I know that that's sort of the play on what was happening on Wall Street. But in the one scene when Charlie Sheen confronts Michael Douglas about the takeover of his parents' airline, he asks him, "How much is enough, Gordon? How much is enough?"
Mm-hmm.
He says that over and over again, and I guess that's the question as we look at this culture and this what's happening. How much is enough?
Right.
When you have world's population is
4%.
the world's population was 10 billion people. They said of those 10 billion people, 7.5 billion have $10,000 and less in total assets. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, I mean, I guess for me, one of the things, like I really thinking about this text in general, I just, I've been thinking about it on a global scale, really. I think that's one way to start thinking about it. Just because there's not much different in the nation where we live, but when you start looking globally, it's very dramatic. It gets even more dramatic than what we have here.
Yeah, one of my lectures in Christian ethics is on global poverty, and it talks about how much as a nation we drive that.
Right.
Because all of our toys, and when I say toys, I'm talking about our iPads, our iPhones, all of that stuff. People make $1 or $2 a day in order for us to get it at the price, and then the corporations, they changed the tax law back in 1980. Now, they could only deduct $5 million a year, and I wish I could make $5 million a way. but they changed it to unlimited, so they could pay whatever they want to, and that's where people always complain, but they don't look at the total picture. That's when the middle management and a lot of the middle class was driven out. Right. And you look at the automobiles, they don't make anymore. Oldsmobile, DeSoto, all of those cars were made for that group of people, and now it's just been wiped out. And even when we had the tax law that was passed in 2017, all that, the one that we got is going away. It's going away, and people are going to blame Biden for it when it was written that way to go away when the guy left office.
Right, yeah. You talk about 2017, because in 2017, I mean, the so-called tax cut, actually every year, that so-called cut for the middle class gets smaller and smaller. I can't remember what year it is either, maybe 2024, 2025, but it reverts back to prior to 2017 again,
Right.
So,
well, I think the interesting thing about this text, and the way that, in contrast to the way that all of our so-called leaders have been trying to convince us things work, is that Jesus comes and goes straight down to the level of the people that need to hear the good news,
right,
and talks to those people and suggests that it's going to be a reversal that's going to redistribute things back to them, when basically the way that things have been running for the last, at least since the 70s and before that, but in particular in the years that you all are talking about, they've been telling us that if we keep giving money to the top and the top 1%, then that money's going to trickle down to all of us somehow. And
that's what we call supply side economics. Something I always, Leonard, you always see me talking about all the time about supply side, supply side, supply side. I mean that's supply side economics, straight up.
Well,
yeah.
And just so we are clear,
Yeah.
about whether this has been working or not.
Yeah.
This is this is where all the wealth has been going. Yeah. And not only do they not make those cars to sell them, they don't make them here, because the people used to make them and then they could buy them.
Right. Yeah.
But
and one of the things I like about this text is, what Jesus does, he counters two prevailing views that were really widespread in our culture. One is the fact that those who are marginalized, is their fault.
Mm-hmm.
That Yahweh is displeasing them because they sin. And then there was the non-Jewish perspective of that, which is the Roman and Greek system felt the same way, that the gods were put you in that position because you didn't do what the gods' will were. Then also it counteracts that popular philosophy Stoicism, which says whatever your situation is, make the best of it. Right. Which is a very, very popular philosophy during that time. So with Jesus' speech or on that mount counters all that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head because it's just so, you get to see it. And I guess how I want to say this, I get to see real wealth. I mean, I know people, and it's just amazing. Like one guy I know real well. You remember Windsor Farms when you lived here, don't you?
Yeah.
Guy bought a house out there and tore it down and built another house. I mean, that's the kind of wealth,
Well, right. I can even go better than that. If you could, I live out in Mannequin, Virginia. On my road, if you drive down my road 4 miles, you will see a house that's a mansion that was originally built for a couple that had 3 people in it. This house has 31 bathrooms in it. 31 bathrooms. And it was originally 3 people in it. I think they lost the house after the .com blew up in 2000s. And I think now whoever owns that property now, it looks like they're trying to turn it into a winery, because I see the vineyards out there. But this place is huge. The house has 31 bathrooms. The servant house is probably 10 times bigger than my house. The servant's house is.
Mm-hmm.
It's on this beautiful piece of land. I think the property might be worth, I don't know, I'm guessing 20, 25, 30 million.
Mm-hmm.
Originally for 3 people were in the house at one time.
Right. And then you look at all the houses in inner cities that are just abandoned.
Right.
And nobody lives in them. And we it's so much we could do. And that's the thing, being a healthcare provider and just seeing how disparaged that is, and how no access to care, and people have to drive miles, and I'm when I look at the commercials, we see, I don't have cable or satellite, so I have to look at online TV all the time. And on those back channels, there are advertisements every day, and they talking about the $140 they can get you back from your Medicare, but they never talk about how much people get made, money people make just transferring you from original Medicare
to the Medicare Advantage plans.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I mean, I was listening to announcements Sunday on the radio station in Tappahannock, and they were promoting this guy to come in and said he can guarantee you save your money, and they're doing this in church. And I have people that I have told not to enroll in it that live in the Middle Peninsula. And sometimes when they need to get a test, they have to go all the way to Chesapeake to get it.
Yeah.
So, it's just, and then just the mentality of scarcity. That's our biggest enemy, because you don't have, but it's always a sale, sale, sale. So you load up on this stuff, and I mean, Darren, I hope they don't act out in Wisconsin like they do here in Richmond, where the weatherman comes on and says it's gonna snow,
And then raid the grocery store.
and it's nothing left, and then
Yeah, nothing left. Yeah.
you end up having to throw that stuff out. And I mean,
Yeah.
and I know how to, especially in rural areas, because I have a home down in Matthews County, and it wasn't like I had a whole lot there,
Yeah.
but Isabel came through, and the power was out for 12 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I no longer had to throw out the refrigerator. I mean, the food, I had to throw the refrigerator out. It got,
Yeah.
And we just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's bad on both ends.
Yeah.
And,
And I keep on saying we have to talk about macro stuff, because we look at certain issues like the whole climate change issue. One of the things that concerns me in terms of the whole climate change issue is that when we talk about like some of the mitigation that might take place, who gets displaced by the mitigation, and who doesn't?
yeah.
Who does the mitigation help, and who does it hurt?
Yeah.
Because we don't have to talk about the fact that you might have sea level rise and things, or even in Earth. We saw what happened with the storm that came through back 2 or 3 or 4 months ago. We had all that urban flooding, like what happened in my hometown, Philadelphia. I mean, we have to talk about that type of mitigation. Who gets helped by that mitigation? Who doesn't? Because a lot of folks, I know in Philadelphia that got hurt, they didn't have a whole lot of money when that river rose and those areas flooded out.
Mm-hmm.
Those are struggling folk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's one verse in here that I love. It says, "Blessed are you when people revile you and all against my name," because I'm one of those pastors that was removed.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
I'm glad that they talk about people speaking well of you all the time.
Right.
For that one too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, I think that I'm just, it's one of those things, though, where we're so far away from this perspective, that it's hard to imagine how we, how people get their heads around this.
And how do you do as a church deal with if your church is a crystal cathedral? I mean, especially when we look at those churches that which are the congregation is well off, and the church is a $2 or $3 million building.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
$50 million, $100 million.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about being skewed. Here, Jesus was, like you did a good job of saying that, Darren. He was at the level of where these people were. And TextBase does a good job of doing that. But yet, in a lot of ways, we are so far removed from that. And I think one of the challenges of this text is the woes say that to me, that if you that mitigation is not just having a soup kitchen. Mitigation is being involved in transformation of systems that dehumanize folks. So if you're a church and you have a soup kitchen, that ain't cutting it. I mean, that's a start, but that's not cutting it to what the woes are talking about.
Right.
If you're not involved in the transformation of systems that dehumanize and cause this type of marginalization, then woe is to you too.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I think, to me, I think a lot about how, Jesus actually, incarnates himself in among this group of people who he's preaching good news to.
Yeah.
So in a way, he is expressing like their actual concerns. I
Yeah.
mean, he knows what they are actually calling for.
Yeah.
And it's good news to them what he's saying because he's coming from them. And I think that it's just there's so many ways that the system is set up to as soon as possible isolate us from people who are poor. And if we do get in among people who are poor, we're taught how to think about them in a way that discounts anything that they might tell us that is their real perceived need. And like
Yeah.
you're saying about, I mean, soup kitchens are really, good things.
Yeah,
I
are a
mean,
good thing.
people
Right.
and
That's
people
a
will tell
start.
you that they
Yeah.
need food,
Yeah.
but if you are with a group of people long enough who need food, you begin to realize that there's they need to address the problem of why they don't
They
have
need to
food.
right. Right.
I mean?
We're
Like,
saying the same
and
thing.
there's that second,
Yeah.
there's the second level step there.
Yeah.
That again, it's the food pantry or the food soup kitchen is the triage.
Yeah, that's the
You're
triage.
trying
Yeah.
to make
Right.
you're trying to get people fixed up who are already in a bad situation. What we
Yep.
don't do is the prevention work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
And it really has to make you wonder, how did our theology switch so from what we see here, not only in this text, but what we see in Matthew when Jesus talks about the least and the left out.
Right.
How did our witness get so messed up?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it all started. The churches. When we talk to this early century church, we're talking about folks gathering in their homes. But then after what, 5th, 6th century AD, the cathedrals, the church became the elite. When you look, especially look at the period of the Enlightenment, it became the elite.
Mm-hmm.
So everything really got skewed out of place.
But we had a chance here in the United States, because when you had the revival movement and whatnot, that was, the camp meetings and everything. But I look at it, and I think somebody else described it to me better, that we have forsaken the Gospels and we've gone to this post-resurrection Jesus and the letters of Paul.
Right.
We are forsaking the Jesus that Darren put this great job of who stood at the levels where the people are at.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what we what we were talking about when we first started doing this Luke, stuff is that the idea. What is the idea of salvation? What does salvation look like? Because we have made it into this thing that's a personal piety.
Yeah,
it's it's a very individualistic moral thing.
Yeah.
That you get forgiveness for your particular sins, and we don't think about even how those sins are participating in systems
right,
that hurt people. We just think about a bad thought that I had as a teenager or whatever, something like that, and then after you make that decision, then it's all about staying pure for the rest of your life. And our idea of salvation never gets to the point of looking at the actual world that God is trying to save.
And I think that's why we need voices like. I think that's why we need voices like Dr. Cannon and the womanists in general. I think the woman. I'm looking more and more at that, and I think the womanists do a good job of reminding us of, particularly from their perspective, the dehumanization of Black female bodies, but they do a good job reminding us about the systems in place that dehumanize folks. That remind us of that.
Yeah.
And what we have to realize, how Jesus was brought up, and he was, stepped in Exodus, Deuteronomy,
Mhm.
Leviticus, and all of that was about building community.
Yeah.
And how we talk about this relationship, but it's a relationship with God, but a relationship with other people. And like in Leviticus it said, you must be holy because I am holy. And the way it gets me how we flipped, how we moved Judaism to a lower level and Islam
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah.
But now we got this flip thing where you got to have the Jews in charge of Jerusalem in order for Jesus to come back and all that.
Right.
But
So that he can destroy all of them. That's the part that we leave out.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But the more I read, the prophets and the Torah, the more I can understand Jesus.
Mhm.
And this was in 93 or 1994 when I was taking Old Testament under Jerome Ross, and
Jerome Ross. Yeah.
he said, to understand Jesus, you have to understand him for who he was,
Yeah.
and he was a Jew.
Yeah.
And as Christians, we miss that. And I want to say, Jesus didn't come to set up a new movement. Jesus came to make the old movement right.
Right. Yep. Yep.
and we've taken this thing and just
well, yeah. I mean, and it's in thinking about that. I mean, it's obvious because if you think about, I mean, at least if you're trying to build a narrative from what the Old Testament Hebrew understanding of salvation was. I mean, it was based in the land. It was based in the people. It was based in the community. It had to have a material feeding of people and restoring of land. I mean, that was what it was. And so to imagine that all of a sudden within a certain small amount of years that all is just going to get flipped all around, even though they're using the exact same language. Jesus used the exact same language from these people, that it's going to be that different. I mean, we've just really taken it off the land, taken it off
right.
of creation, out of creation, really.
And that's why we can't deal with climate change,
right.
Because
Right.
and people will fight you about the creation story. I mean, if you change 7 days to time period, which the Hebrew can translate either way, you'll call a heretic, but yet and still, and just like I said, when God said it was good and very good, actually that meant excellence. And so why are you messing up something very good or excellent? But it's because we don't have a foundation. We've thrown the foundation away.
Yeah.
And we've got to go back to that foundation, to get what Jesus wants, and
Yeah.
I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not speaking for Jesus. I'm just reading with
right.
I've been in this so much now.
I was just gonna go. I mean, and before you all got on, I was, before I read this, the section for today, to go along with what we're saying here, the section right before this is Jesus goes up on the mountain to pray and chooses the 12 apostles. And of course, like you're saying, the choosing of the 12 apostles is a refounding, a renewing of the 12 tribes. I mean, it's building right into that story, saying that we are, if you need to understand that story to pick up with what I'm doing, because I'm trying to renew and recreate it, with this ragtag group of folks that I put together here. Yeah. No, that's Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, obviously, I think the biggest, the hardest thing is that we just don't realize how much our thinking about the world is not shaped by the Bible, even though we are church people who listen to the Bible every week. We there's so much that seeps in.
Yeah, well, we let the world shape the Bible for us.
Right.
And so, we always get on Jefferson about cutting out these things, but we cut out everything that we don't want to hear,
Right.
and then what we do hear, instead of our, our theology informing our ideology informs our theology, and we mess it all up.
Yeah. I guess we have to remember too. We just remember who his audience was. I guess the majority of those folks that were probably listening that day were what New Testament scholars, the people of the land. There was a huge part of that population, people who didn't own any land, were just scrounging from day to day. How are they going to make it this day? So give us this day our daily bread. Really, really, what was reality?
Well, Jesus is not afraid to confront, the powers, and we see that happens throughout. But it seems in this particular instance that he's probably got a lot of amens going around, even in the woes section with the group he's preaching to in this particular moment. So he knows his audience in this particular case. It might be easier to pronounce the woes in that setting than it would be in some other.
Some settings you better not say that. I mean, like I told you, I preached this thing before, and it fell on deaf ears. And the thing was, in that small little rural church, there were 3 millionaires in there, and everybody was beholden to them. And so they didn't want to hear about the woe to people.
Yeah. The interesting thing though is that it's like there's a baseline that's set by the blessings, right? So even if you are wealthy now and you recognize the error of your ways, like you can never get to a position where you're not going to be laughing, full, and whatever the other one was, I can't remember what the first one is. Right? I mean, even if you become poor, you inherit the kingdom of God, you are full, and you laugh. So it's like the baseline is set in a pretty good place. Like it's not just it's over for you.
And I guess that first century community tried to live out that by being, I hate to say it, being socialist. Everybody shared their possessions, which is that dirty word, socialism. Oh, I said it. That dirty word. But I mean, that's how they chose to try to live this out.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, and of course, in Luke, we have Acts as the follow-up book. And so we see what those communities tried to do right away. And it's interesting, because even the people who follow Paul, like you were saying, Leonard, this idea of casting aside the Jesus of the Gospels and sticking with Paul. Looks like I'm freezing here. Let's see if I can get caught up.
Yeah, we hear you fine, but
okay, good. I'll just try to make a face that I'm okay keeping for a long time. But yeah, I mean, because even Paul in some throwaway lines just says, you need to remember the poor.
Yeah.
That to us, it's just a small line, but my contention is that was so baked into the church that they didn't need to dwell on it. I mean, it was obvious to them at that time.
Yeah.
They didn't need to keep going back to it over and over again.
Yeah.
It was clear that was what, I mean, how could you come away from being around Jesus and not understand that particular point? I mean, like the first few hundred years, you would think that would have been drilled into them pretty well.
Yeah, but when you start reading about the super apostles and all those folks,
Right.
The interlopers showed up real soon and started preaching their own thing for their own benefit.
Right. Yeah.
And we still paying for it, and that's we have to be so careful about it and have to revisit this, so many times.
Yeah.
Again, to me, the major challenge for the church was when you go from what you are to becoming, to you go to cathedral.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the big challenge right there. How do you remember the poor when you're a cathedral?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think, like you were saying, I mean, I think there's obviously from what we've talked about so far, part of the thing that has shaped us more than anything else is our commitment to capitalism. And all of the ideology that goes along with that is really, in some ways, the religion, that gets preached more successfully than anything that we can preach.
Because that's the American dream. The American dream is to be a happy capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
That's the American dream.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, it's a dream that well, based on the basic tenets of capitalism, is a dream that can only come true for a smaller and smaller group of people to a greater and greater extent as things go on. That's just, I mean, and that's the way it works. So I mean, it's I mean, this is, I get into this argument. My mom might be watching, so anyway, I'll say it. I get into this discussion with my mother. How about that? We won't call it an argument. We won't even call it an argument. But just based on the names, the names given to the systems, capitalism is a system that focuses on building capital.
Right.
And that's the point of the system. And whatever you want to say, critique about other things, socialism is a system that's based on the good of the social, the society. Just along those.
Yeah, but see where we've messed that up. People here in the United States equate socialism with communism, which it is not.
Right.
And as long as you can make that code word for communism, that's where the problem is.
Well, and they also associate communism with certain historical realities that really have nothing to do with, there's multiple communisms, I mean, like there's, just like there's multiple capitalisms. You might find a nicer, sweeter version of it somewhere, but you're right. I mean, it's an automatic, but I mean, that's the ideology again. It's just a straight, you've put a label on it, and so you can deny it, and then, you're safe to go on and forget about it. But obviously, whatever I don't know if it's helpful to try to come up with new language or whatever it is, but to me, this text and these words and the rest of Luke and Acts make it pretty clear, at least what Jesus's critique would be. Now, what the solution, what label the solution might have, we can maybe argue about that, but it's pretty clear what the critique would be.
Yeah, well, I'm just about trying to get it right, and it's I just when I just look at things and I get to see things, and it's just so troubling when. I remember when I had my pharmacies, I go to people's houses, and I know if I went to this lady's house one day, she was in a wheelchair in Matthews Heights, which has been torn down there. But she was just sitting out front with the door wide open as if to say, if you want to take anything, go in there and take it. I'm just sitting here trying to survive, and
Yeah. Well, and it's getting worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting bad. For I was talking to someone today who deals with helping people that are in rehab places and moving and transitions and stuff like that, and it's just this the state of exhaustion between healthcare workers and those rehab places that never pay people. They don't they pay people terrible there, and now they got them working twice as much as they were. I mean, it's rough.
Yeah, now they're having problems trying to find folks to do rehab, to
Yeah,
do to work in nursing homes. I mean, that's a major challenge nowadays. Yeah. So, wow.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I hope I'm not preaching this text. I'm preaching the
Now
Isaiah.
he tells us. No,
The
no, no.
thing
I'm with.
try to see it different. I mean, I preached the one with Jesus and the fisherman,
Yeah,
and
this past Sunday. Yep, heard
yeah,
that. Yep.
and I lifted up that feeling. The text didn't say it, but if you read it long enough, over and over again,
Hmm.
you could get that feeling of people wanting to give up.
Hmm.
Because Mark can tell you most of the time, all people want to talk about, yeah, just throw the net on the other
Yeah,
side,
yeah,
and the Lord got a
Yeah,
blessing
yeah.
for you.
yeah,
But to
Go out
live,
into the deep water.
yeah,
but
Right.
it's a lesson in going out to the deep water.
yeah,
Because I used to, I know we'll forget. I used to preach, and one of my deacons would come up there. He said. He said, I was worried about you preaching because you were going into the deep water and you got to be able to swim to go. In other words, he tell me you better know what you're talking about,
yeah,
and it's a whole lot along with that, but that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm hoping people will see, that we got dig down into the text. Just don't, because you can make this a real beautiful, calming sermon
Hmm.
without even showing anybody what's going on.
Right.
But when you really deal with it, people, I'm praying that people will wake up from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the other side, I mean, and this is, part of it is there's the shock for those of us who, and now we don't, I'll try not to go there, but there's a shock for us who consider ourselves rich or wealthy, and in many ways in the world we are, right? There's a shock in hearing these words. Um, but part of that is because we don't recognize, um, the violence and the suffering that goes along with being the poor. I mean, if we really experienced that and saw that, we would pronounce the woes on ourselves already. We wouldn't, we wouldn't hear it as something terrible, because we don't think that, as you were saying, before, that we don't realize the ways that our enrichment depends on the exploitation and the suffering and the violence done to poor people. And we don't see that.
yeah.
So the woes hit us as something unfair, something, you know, something taking away something from that we've earned, or that
Yeah,
that we have a right to.
yeah,
In the end, it's really just, it's love and justice from God's point of view to the people who are suffering. I mean,
Yeah, and
the other
because
thing
yeah, go
I was
ahead,
gonna
Mark.
say, because the thing we need to ask ourselves is, again, in the church, how do we go about changing mindsets? How do we go about that? I know we do it through educational ministry, but how do we go about doing that?
yeah.
If whoever figures that out, that person's going to take a long time, because
Right.
I'm looking at what Dr. Ellison wrote back in the 30s, what Dr. Richardson wrote back in the 40s, and what I'm writing right now.
Hmm.
And it's the hardest thing to get people to change.
Yeah.
And you know, I know we're not going here, but the theology in the churches that taught racism, it was never untaught.
Right.
And so,
Right.
even if it's not being taught in the church, it's still being taught at home.
Right.
And so, how do you turn this thing? And I mean, when I try to deal with the health issues as a pastor, and having a small church and have one member die and have other people with COVID, and still you can't get people to take the vaccine, because of this mentality surrounding health that you just got to have faith, you got to pray,
Right.
And then you got of course, still got some of the mistrust that's still in there, the mistrust of science, mistrust of the health system. Some of that's baked in there too. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah, no, all of that, all of that for sure. Yeah, it's a yeah. And well, I think though one thing from this text and one thing from Luke in particular is that, I mean, I just think we have to be, we have to keep reminding ourselves and keep watching ourselves about straying from the actual material reality that the text is talking about, and not letting ourselves get off into, just in our minds and in our, whatever.
There's an ugly truth to this text.
Right.
There's an ugly truth to this text. Yeah.
And I mean, and quite frankly, it's the ugly truth that Jesus was sent to address. I mean, like that's the thing, and for somehow, we have missed, like just kind of skipped over that. So that's so that's a big,
And and y'all understand that word incarnation, that was God on purpose, coming to try to save us from our messed up situation and get us back to what the relationship was supposed to be. But we have some people have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. This was good. I am preaching this text this coming Sunday, so we'll see what happens.
All right.
You did. So you did Luke 5 last week. You did. Yeah.
Went real well. Did you preach it too?
Yeah, I did too. I kind of talked about the it being a moment where Peter sees a revelation of God.
Okay.
And when you want to ask yourself why would they leave everything, and how could we ever think about leaving everything? It's that moment when we come into contact with God and realize that the connection that we have with God and what God loves in us, like, it doesn't have anything to do with whether we're the best fisherman or whether we're the best this or the best, or the best that. It's just, it's just the core of who we are, and when what we're leaving behind, it doesn't even mean anything by the time when we have that moment,
Yeah, I just looked at it from the point where you go into the text and the boats are just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I mean, in a situation like that, you just leave the boats there. I mean, it's almost like you're saying, I don't want to do it, but we'll deal with the nets, because we can sell the nets and do this with the nets. And so it was when you feel like giving up, and that's
No, exactly.
And I think the also good news is that that the culture just saw them as just some fishermen. Jesus saw them as that you are more than just some fishermen.
Right.
I mean, it's not bad to be a fisherman, but this culture identifies you as those fishermen that smell and stink fish and can't come to synagogue. No, you're more than that.
Yeah.
Right.
There's more potential in you than that.
Yeah. And then we had it was Communion Sunday for us too. So one of the things I mean, I think I said this. I think I said this, but this is what I meant to say. Is that in that moment, like it's you can say that Jesus knew that he was going to go out and find Simon Peter, on this shore or whatever. But another way to look at it is that he was walking down this path, saw these boats, knew he needed to get in a place where he could talk to people, was in a boat with these fishermen and looked around and whatever in that moment just said, these people can be disciples. These people can follow me. Right. I mean, it's almost just like there's nothing in them necessarily that makes them any different than anybody else. It's just that they actually do follow.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was just saying that, we're all welcome at, we're all being chosen and called right here in this moment to come and take these elements, to come and live this life, to come and follow. And whatever you think it takes for you to get worthy to it, that's not the point. The point is you just have to, be willing to set it aside and follow. But yeah. I might not have said it that well, but you
gonna send us the link for this Sunday.
I'll send you I'll try to find the links to send you a couple of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since I hit rock bottom with the one a couple weeks ago. a few weeks ago. Yeah, actually this is my chance to redeem the one from the mission statement of Jesus. We're back in this theme. People are probably approaching Sunday with trepidation. What's he gonna say? Oh well, yeah.
So
all right. Well, good talking to you.
What's next?
What is next? Let's see here.
What is next?
What did you say you're preaching about this Sunday, Leonard?
I picked it up last night, and I don't know where I put it because I just chose it last night when I got home after a hard day. But I think it's the Isaiah text.
Isaiah text.
Is there one in there from Isaiah?
It's Jeremiah. There's Jeremiah this week, but maybe it was
okay.
There was Isaiah last week too. The calling of Isaiah.
Yeah, well, no, what not that. Oh, I got too much paper on my desk. But anyway, I'll let you know. I'll send you.
Yeah. Well, next week is just the following text from
the love for enemies,
27 to 38, love of enemies. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It just goes from difficult to impossible. Yeah. So yeah, 27 through 627 through 38, and then the week after that is in the calendar is Transfiguration Sunday. So the Luke 9 mountaintop text. So
y'all gonna think I'm bad. When is Ash Wednesday?
The 2nd
of March. Okay.
2nd of March. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get into So we'll be into Lent right away.
Okay. Yeah.
It's coming, man. This unbelievable. This year is moving fast.
It is. Wow.
Yeah. All right. Well, good talking to you. Oh, and Leonard, you got your thing on when is it?
Yeah,
tomorrow. It's Wednesday night, right?
Yeah, right. 7:00.
Yeah, I think I registered for it. So yeah, okay.
I went and found it. Now, it was one of those things where I know I found it, and whether I registered or not, I better go back and check. It's like the email that you write and you don't send. You get partway there and you get distracted with something else. But I'll have to go check it out. All right, the 9th. So the 9th at 7:00 Eastern time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we look forward to it. We'll try to bug you in the chat.
All right, y'all.
Okay, take care.
All right,
See y'all later.
See you later.